Hey guys, this is John from US Dash Camera. Today I got a review on the IROAD X10. Now this was sent to me for review by blackboxmycar.com, so I'd like to thank them. So obviously from that clip that played at the beginning, that was the rear camera from this camera capturing a small parking lot fender bender. Now some people might argue that the front camera itself is going to capture the fact that I wasn't moving when I was hit, and I did honk twice to try to warn the driver that I had already backed up before her. But I do like having that peace of mind knowing the rear camera is going to capture the actual incident and much more likely to capture their license plate. So I think it's very important to have that rear camera, and it's pretty cool to be able to show that footage for this review. Now as you can see on the top here, this is 4K Ultra HD in the front camera, 1080p in the rear camera. Now I'll have to apologize that footage was really blurry, or the window is really dirty, because that's the rear quarter window of my car, and right now in winter in Minnesota we got very salty roads. They put a lot of salt and brine on our roads to keep them de-iced, and it basically covers your car in salt every time you drive. So even if I wash my windows every single time I go out, they get a film of salt. So for the samples I will have better quality videos that don't have a bunch of salt covering the glass. So I wanted to cover a lot of the main features of this camera. As a 4K 2-channel camera, there are a couple main competitors that I have reviewed, one from Blackvue, one from Thinkware, and also the one from Viofo. Now this camera is going to have some features that I think are definitely better than those other cameras, but then there's some odd quirks about this camera that I didn't really like, so we're going to touch on all of those pros and cons of this model. So let's take a look at the camera first. This is the main unit, and it's really light, surprisingly light. It's not to say that it's cheap, but it makes me wonder what makes a lot of the other cameras so heavy. So similar to Thinkware cameras, this has the rotating lens on the front. It says the model and resolution on the side. There is a power button, which I really like Thinkware. I like the ability to be able to turn it off, so you save battery when you're using parking mode, which we'll touch on parking mode later in this video. I've tested other dash cameras from IROAD, and they all have this external Wi-Fi dongle. It came already installed into the port. I questioned this in previous reviews, and I still don't know why they do this, but I suppose if you want to be sure that there's no Wi-Fi connection, you can pull that out and then no one can connect to it. It is worth noting there are no cloud features on this camera like Thinkware or Blackvue. Here you can see the power in the rear camera, and then we have an OBD port and GPS. So one thing I'm not a fan of is external GPS. On a high-end camera like this, I would expect that to be built in. So that's sort of a con right there. But one really cool feature they have here is instead of using the typical DC or power cord that just plugs into your 12-volt socket, or the 3-wire hardwire kit to connect to your fuse box for parking mode, they do offer an OBD2 option, which Blackvue did send a review unit of that also. So it'll plug into both the power and the OBD port, and then with that it can actually, besides running parking mode, it can monitor your car. It can tell you diagnostics such as your battery life and a few other features. Unfortunately my car, a 2007 Prius, was not supported. I did end up choosing a newer model Prius to see if it would work, and some of the features worked but some of them didn't. One example in the PC app is it'll actually show when you're in reverse or park or different features like that, and it didn't seem like it was detecting a lot of that stuff. But you are able to get a lot of other diagnostics from that OBD2 port, and that's something the other big brands don't offer at all. So that's something, if you guys are interested in having an OBD scanner device, it is worth checking this one out, because you can also scan error codes with that, so that's pretty cool. You can see on the top it has a mounting plate just like Thinkware, so you can remove this from your windshield if you'd like. On the bottom you can see there's a GPS light, a record light. This is made in Korea. And then we have a emergency lock button that'll lock a file if you want to save a file and make sure it doesn't get overwritten. And then we got some speakers here. So now the rear camera is pretty simple. It just uses micro USB and does have a indicator light on the rear. It is only 1080p, so unlike the Thinkware U1000, their top of the line 4K camera, that has 1440p in the rear, while this one only has 1080p. In regards to video quality though, I will say I think this camera does actually have the best day quality, at least in the 4K front camera. I thought it was very detailed. It didn't look pixelated. It didn't look like there was a bunch of compression. It just looked very crystal clear to me. So this is definitely a camera to check out if you are interested in having a 4K 2-channel camera and aren't happy with the quality of some of the other cameras. Like the Blackvue DR900 is based on a couple-year-old hardware, and the video quality is definitely lower quality than the competitors, even though Blackvue offers some features that the other companies don't, specifically Blackvue Cloud. Video quality, of course, is one of the most important features to most people, so this is one to check out. Now the rear camera looks okay. I wouldn't say it looks amazing. The 1080p is fine. The difference between 1080p and 1440p is often hard to tell unless it's very high bit rate. There's a lot of factors that make a difference. I would say the rear camera on this is definitely acceptable. Now at night, I think the video quality is still okay, but as I try to state in all of my reviews, night footage is harder to judge because in low light conditions it's harder to pick up detail. So one of my comparisons I usually like to do is when I'm going through an intersection, how easily can I read the street names? And I thought this one was okay, might have been about average. I didn't do a direct comparison to other cameras, but just looking at sample footage from older cameras I reviewed, I'd say this camera's okay at night. And of course the rear camera is going to suffer at night again, especially because you don't have headlights shining behind you to light up the road behind you, but that's to be expected. I think most people are going to be satisfied with the video quality. Now I wanted to talk about some of the other features. Like a lot of other high-end cameras, and even a lot of cheaper cameras these days, it does have some ADAS features. That stands for Advanced Driver's Assistance Systems. That's, for example, you can have it beep at you when the car in front of you at a stoplight starts to move. It can also warn you if you're coming too fast or coming too close to the car in front of you. But I'm not a big fan of these features because without the ability to control your steering or your brake system, I feel like it's not really a good solution, because if you're falling asleep or if you aren't paying attention and you're about to rear end someone, I just don't see these beeping noises really saving you. Now this camera has a decent parking mode. It has some pros and cons like a lot of the other parts of this camera. What I was disappointed to find out is there's no buffered parking. Now I assumed there would be because it's a pretty high-end Korean dash camera. The other high-end Korean companies, Blackvue and Thinkware, offer buffered parking mode, and I looked through the manual, I looked at the product description, and it doesn't mention buffered parking mode. With this camera, it does start recording when it detects motion, so you're not getting the 5 to 10 seconds leading up to an incident. But one of the features I do really like about this camera's parking mode is the fact that you can split up the motion detection and impact detection. That is a feature some of my viewers have commented about. I'm pretty sure Blackvue used to offer this feature, but it seems like now Thinkware and Viofo and Blackvue, they all offer parking mode, buffered parking mode, but you can't turn off the motion detection. It's either you have motion and impact on, or you have to use one of the other parking features or parking modes. For example, this camera does also have a time-lapse parking mode, so it'll continuously record at 1 frame per second, and then if it senses impact or motion, then it switches to the 10 frames per second. And with the ability to turn off motion detection in parking mode, you're not going to fill up your memory card with so much footage if you are parked in an area with people and cars moving around you all the time. Of course, this parking mode does have low battery protection, and during the winter it can be set to cut power to your battery even sooner because you don't want to drain your battery too low on a very cold winter day, because if it cuts off at a point that it would normally cut off during the summer or warm months, that cold temperature might drop your battery voltage overnight even more and leave you with a dead battery. So that winter protection feature is nice. It does also have a high temperature cutoff, so if you live in a hot climate and during parking mode, if it's getting really hot over 100 degrees, it will shut the camera off to protect it from getting damaged from that high heat. Another thing I was a little disappointed with this parking mode though is there is no built-in timer function. Viofo doesn't offer that currently, as that I am aware of either, but with Blackvue and Thinkware, the benefit of that is if you park for several days at a time and don't want to just run down your battery to 12 volts or whatever your low voltage cutoff is, then you can set it to, say, 6 or 12 or 24 hours on those cameras, and then it'll shut off. With this, it'll just keep staying in parking mode until it gets to that low voltage cutoff or that high temperature cutoff. Now, the app for this camera is pretty interesting. It does, of course, offer all of the settings, customizations that you would expect in a screenless dash camera. One little thing I found strange is with the GPS, it does show your speed on the video, but I didn't see any ability to display the GPS map on the app. One other weird thing to point out is this camera does not support miles per hour, so that really says to me that this camera is really focused on the Korean market, that they didn't even bother adding the ability to switch the camera to miles per hour. What's interesting though is the PC software does offer the ability to view your speed in miles per hour, but in the video the little speed stamp is always kilometers per hour, and when I switched it on the PC software, all it did was switch the speed reading on that Windows software, not the actual camera. So that's a little funky, but with the app you are able to view your GPS location. So guys, overall, this camera is a mixed bag for me. I'd say a lot of people are going to like it because for a competitor in the 4K dash camera market, it has pretty excellent video. At least during the daytime, it really shines with that front 4K video quality. It does have a decent parking mode, but lacking some of those really important features such as buffered parking mode, which even Viofo has, and no timer functionality is a big con to me. And the fact that the GPS and Wi-Fi is external to me is just still so weird. I haven't had anyone give me a logical explanation of that. It's just speculation why I think they continue to do that, but for a high-end camera, I would expect all that to be built in. Now, currently the pricing starts at $420 on Black Box My Car, and I will provide links down in the description to where you can purchase that. If you use those links, you do get a discount, so check that out if you're interested. But at $420, it includes one 32GB memory card, hardwire kit, and also the GPS dongle. If you want that OBD2 scanner, it's going to add another $60 to it. I think a lot of people are going to like that feature, having that OBD tool to diagnose your car's errors and see some of the specs like voltage and other things like that. And it does make installation a lot easier, but I don't think it's necessary. I think if you're looking for that OBD scanner tool also, then it's sort of killing two birds with one stone, because it'll always be plugged in and you can always use the app to check that. At that price, I'd say it's a worthy choice to consider. If you really want that excellent 4K video quality on that front camera, acceptable 1080p full HD rear video quality, if you want a pretty decent acceptable parking mode, then this is definitely a camera to consider. In future models, I'd like to see some of those cons I mentioned improved on, and then I think I could really put it up there with my favorite cameras. But considering the pretty high price, it's one of those cameras I feel like it's going to be right in the middle for a lot of people with the other choices in this segment. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, I'd appreciate it if you hit like and subscribe. Of course, like I said, check down in the description to where you can purchase this, and if you use those Black Box My Car links, you will get a discount. As usual, drive safe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.